Hey there. So this video is on section 4 of the Alternative Topics book, section 4 of the Alternative Topics book. And the focus here is on treatment and wellness explanations, And in fact, this information you have already been exposed to within section 4, but I'm framing it in a little different way and going into some additional detail. So one thing I really want you to do is read the introduction section, the introduction to the section 4. I do think that frames what's going on in the two readings later on really well, especially when it comes to the explanation for prospect theory. So let me talk about that first. And so again, you've already read a little bit about prospect theory. You've heard about it. Remember, message framing is an outgrowth of prospect theory, where prevention messages are going to be gain framed, and detection messages are going to be loss framed, and that's where you tend to get better results, right? So we know that from early on. So anyway, so you got to think about application of prospect theory to health and remedies is this idea of being risk averse or going ahead and taking some type of risk. And so we know, and so risk averse means playing it safe out there. So that could be, there have been examples I've used before, and I'll come in with the message framing stuff. But if you want to try to make sense out of prospect theory, a lot of times it's just fall back on kind of its outgrowth of message framing, and you'll kind of go, oh, okay, kind of get it. But this idea of playing it safe, again, sunscreen, if I use a sunscreen with a higher SPF, I'll be better protected against the harmful rays of the sun. And that's playing it safe. So you can come in and prospect theory would argue that, okay, this individual is risk adverse, and so they use sunscreen often, so they're more of a risk adverse type of individual when it comes to their health and healthcare. And again, you can generalize that to any type of treatment or remedy that you can think of. Then you also have individuals who are willing to take risks. So we know that, for instance, getting an HIV test or going out and getting a test for breast cancer or something like that, that is a risky decision to take because you might test positive. However, so you're willing to take that risk because the downside, if you don't take that risk, is going to be greater than if you do take the risk. See how that kind of works? So you're always weighing pros and cons. All right, it's like, yeah, I'm willing to take this risk because if I don't take this risk, the downside could be pretty huge. All right, so there's always this upside downside kind of thing that's going on in terms of application of prospect theory and trying to make sense out of things. And look, you can, and I write this in the little introduction section. You could talk about this in terms of vaccinations and getting an MMR shot for your newborn child. Essentially, are you going to kind of, if you will, play it safe and get the shot, that type of thing. And again, a shot is preventative type of thing. So, getting the shot, you're being risk adverse because you don't want your child to develop measles, mumps, or rubella. Well, you can spin that around the other way, and people sit there and say, and individuals who are anti-vaccination individuals and say, wow, well, if I give my kid a shot, there could be horrible consequences, so I'm not going to give my kids a shot either. And so suddenly prospect theory comes to life and can explain that as well. And again, the little introduction section talks about that. So, but I find it fascinating. So when you think about a big thing I want you to do is when you think about why we pursue certain remedies, et cetera, and why we pull the trigger on doing certain things, ingesting certain things. Prospect theory can actually explain why we do certain things and why we don't do certain things. So, if this were a graduate level health psychology course, we would go into way more detail on this, but it's not. It's just undergrad 474, et cetera. So we don't need to go into that much detail. But anyway, but take a look at the introduction section, and then the first article in there basically comes in and says, hey, guess what? We can use prospect theory to explain why people use homeopathy and alternative medications. And it's basically, if I take these things, there's not really a big downside. There can only be an upside, et cetera. So take a look at that first little summary article, if you will, on alternative medication use and why people do it, and you'll kind of see how prospect theory is used to frame that. So that's the first thing. The second part of the of Section 4 has to deal with placebo effects, and it's something that you read about in the Taylor textbook already, and this just echoes that. I mean, placebo effects are amazing, and do you know there's even something referred to as placebo surgery? You know, where basically and there are a number of articles out there too where you can go in and you can literally go in and take, and this has been done with athletes, but where there's been some damage to their knee, you can go in and actually fix that damage, etc. But they've also done study, and that's the intervention group where you actually go in and do the surgery. But then also there's a group of individuals that they took and they just basically cut them open and then sewed them back up and just said, oh, you had the surgery. And lo and behold, there was no difference in terms of recovery over a 1 year period in terms of functioning of the knee and that type of thing. I mean, amazing. So it's and I was doing a talk over the summer on sports psychology and on some issues of placebo effects, and brought that up, and these college baseball players were like, "Oh my God, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So that was so again, placebos are amazing, and again, a big thing with when we do clinical trials, right? Typically, it's not like placebo, and here is the big intervention finding, the big drug finding. It's typically something more like this. So in general rule of thumb with placebos is that if you give anybody anything, and you tell them, hey, this is a medication, there's a good chance you're going to get some bump up in terms of effect. Now, it might not be as high as if you gave them real medication, but in general, you're going to get a little bump up, and that's the power of the mind. I mean, the mind is an amazing thing, and in some instances, the mind can heal the body. Again, there's this mind-body interaction that goes on back and forth all the time, and if I give you a sugar pill but tell you, hey, this is some magical drug and you're going to feel a lot better in a few days, just that psychological effect of me telling you that can actually improve your well-being. Now, again, not all the time, and there are plenty of books out there on placebos and stuff like that. There's actually a really good book on out there by, I wish I had it in front of me here, but in a lecture class, I'll hold it up, but on issues of placebo effects and antidepressants, and fascinating book, and again, it's just this idea of being able to show what hey, we give you this, and it's really a sugar pill, and in fact, individuals, well-being, their happiness, etc., go up pretty much in tandem with individuals who actually get antidepressants, and that's fascinating. So the book is called The Emperor's New Drugs by Kirsch. I don't know how I. Anyway, really, really interesting book. Really cool book. And if you want to learn just placebos in terms of applied to antidepressants, get this book. You just want to learn about placebos. This book is super cool. So anyway, but yeah, these effects of placebos are amazing. So the other thing is, look, you can tell people, and I love this, you can tell people, hey, guess what? I'm giving you a placebo. This is a sugar pill. And it's supposed to make your mood better, or it's supposed to fix this thing or do whatever. And occasionally that works. You even know I'm taking a shit, but there's just something about the normative pattern of taking a pill or taking, okay, this is going to make me feel better. And even though we know it's not going to give you M&Ms and say these I want you to take 2 M&Ms a day, it's going to improve your mood. And you probably get an uptick in mood just a little bit. Why? Placebo effect. Again, there's this normative behavior, taking drugs, doing certain things, and that alone, if we're doing something in a regimen type of way, thinking it's for our wellness, that will actually increase how we feel or whatever it is. Now, look, placebos don't work all the time in all sorts of different circumstances, and if you have a bacterial infection, you definitely should take antibiotics, etc. So it's here, take this, and so So typically placebos don't really function well in terms of bacterial infections, things like that. But in other instances they actually do. So anyway, so go ahead and do the reading in the book on placebos. Read the little part in the introduction about placebos. But placebo and the placebo effect is amazing. Again, both of these things, whether it's prospect theory or placebos, will explain why we do certain things, why we believe certain things work, etc., and how we weigh the pros and cons or the benefits and risks in terms of what we do. All right? All right, very good. Thanks.